Welcome to She's a Full-On Monet, a digital lifestyle magazine for women. Every week, our editor-in-chief, Kelly Castillo, along with Megan Block and special guests, participate in a deep dive discussion about recent articles and topics we have covered. We invite you to become part of our community where everyone's welcome. You can totally sit with us.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to She's a Full-On Monet. This is episode 31, which, I mean, mind blown. I can't, but it is. I double checked. So I just, our audience keeps growing week to week, and I just really appreciate everybody who's on this journey with us and is patient with us as we've been learning as we go. And trying to balance, the hectic mom life, wife life, adulting life with producing a podcast. It's not always easy, but we do appreciate.
We make it look easy, though. You would never know that behind the scenes it's chaos.
We do appreciate your guys following us on this journey and being a part of it with us. So I just want to thank everybody who comes back week to week, and happy holidays to everybody. We're right in the thick of it. Mm-hmm. I'm really hoping that things calm down after the holiday, but we'll see. Mm-hmm. Stay tuned.
Right.
Today's topic is pretty interesting because we talked about emotional infidelity a while back. I don't remember what episode it was. I think it was like 18 or something like that. But I don't think, we really need to discuss physical infidelity. I think everybody pretty much understands what that is. And that's a no-no. Emotional infidelity was a good topic for us. It was pretty well received. A lot of you guys seemed to like that episode. So today we're talking about another really kind of, I feel like it's not as talked about form of infidelity, which is a financial infidelity. And I was doing some research on this prior to our recording session today, and I got a lot of different statistics, but it seemed like the standard for all the studies that I read was like 40 to 50% of married people say that this is an issue for them. So it's obviously it's a big issue.
Wow. That's crazy. But I'm gonna first of all by saying, like, my husband and I, we have separate bank accounts. We don't have a joint bank account. We don't have like a shared card that we use. I don't have access to his account information. Maybe I do. I mean, I've transferred funds to him, but like, this isn't something that I personally know firsthand much about. So I'm not in that 40 to 50% as of right now. But money's a big deal, and trust and money are kind of, they go hand in hand when you're in a relationship. So I can also see totally how 40 to 50% would be affected by this. That's really sad.
And I think, infidelity in any form is really a trust violation. And that's what you have to recover from if you're part of this high statistic. But I think where the difference in percentages comes from is that this topic could be something as minor as, hiding a shopping bag or an Amazon package from your husband to something really serious like a gambling addiction or a compulsive shopping addiction. So obviously those are very different levels of financial infidelity. So we want to make sure we're not attacking people who, your husband says, "Oh, I love your new dress." And you say, "Oh, this old thing, like I've had it in the closet forever." You just bought it. Like, we're not trying to make anyone feel attacked today. We are actually just going to spit some facts at you and talk about this topic. But I think everybody has some extent of this.
Now, here's the thing. If you are taking care, if you and your partner have an agreement on who pays for what and how it's divvied up and how it works out, and you're taking care of your own, and then you're just hiding Amazon packages, but you're still taking care of your own, but you just, you spending a lot because it's the holidays, you know what I mean? I take care of my own stuff, and I pay my bills to my husband, but we have an agreement on who pays what. But I still feel kind of guilty having those packages pile up because, but I still pay my bills. So I don't know where I fall in this situation, because I totally am taking, there is no cheating going on, but also I feel guilty. And I'm still one of those, like, they make those videos on TikTok where you're like hiding the Amazon packages or like having like those kind of situations. I still feel like I fall in that, but I'm still covering my bills. So This is interesting. Because are you talking about the people who share
No, just in general.
money? Just in general. So I could be this.
Yeah. So it seemed like the studies that I read that were over 50% of people saying that this was an issue for them were much smaller types of, I don't want to say lying, but okay, I'll say lying. Smaller types of that, like hiding receipts or lying about the price they paid for something to their spouse. It was a much smaller number for people who actually identified it as a form of infidelity. That number was more like 25 to 30%. So I think the reason why is because, I mean, the dictionary defines it as anytime you lie to your spouse about anything money related, but it doesn't require that you guys have joint bank accounts. It doesn't require that you are completely transparent with your financial situation. It's just any form of misrepresentation when in terms of finances. So it's a very wide range of things, and they're widely ranging of how serious they are. But I think it also depends on the person who feels that their trust was violated, how seriously they feel that was violated. So I read one example where a woman found out during tax season that her husband made twice the salary he had told her he made, and they kept separate bank accounts, so she did not know, and she was horrified, and it led to a whole further conversation about why he felt the need to lie to her. And so I think most of these issues can be resolved with honesty, transparency, and kind of having regular conversations when it comes to money matters in a relationship. I think I know for my partner and I, what works for us, because I handle all the finances, what works for us is at the beginning of every month, we sit down and review our spending from the previous month. We review like what went in, what came out, because we have some shared goals. And so we're working towards those goals. So we sit down every month and review, like if we're on track for that. It's the end of the year right now. So we're doing tax planning, and we do estate planning and stuff. And so we kind of trying to be on the same page, even though, I mean, we each have individual cards and individual accounts, but we do have that kind of like a monthly sit down to talk about where we're at. How did last month look? What do we need to work on? Are we on track? I think that kind of makes it's a level of accountability to each other, for one. And it makes it a good time to bring up those things. Because sometimes something happens. It could be you get a big old tax bill in the mail, or an unexpected expense comes up, or you want to do something, especially in blended families like mine, you want to do something for one of your kids. And you keep trying to find a good time to approach it, but it just never seems like the right time. And then before you know it, it's gone on so long that now it is lying now, because it's been too long. You should have been talking about it. So that once a month little sit down helps a lot.
Yeah, it just sounds like no matter what the details of what goes down is, as long as you are both on the same page and generally open about what's going on and heading towards a similar goal, then no one feels like they're being lied to. Then, because that's where the infidelity part comes from. So everybody, I mean, I know couples who are so transparent, they write their goals on a whiteboard, and they write like how much they make and how much they pay rent. And like, it's like written for like, if I came over and had coffee, I would know, but that helps them keep on track. And that couple now owns a home. So it's just like, maybe there is something to that, and I guarantee you they were very open and honest towards each other, if they're that open and honest up in their own living space. So, I think that's one way to avoid infidelity, is to, whether it's once a month or whatever works for you and your significant other, being open and, writing things down always helps, and looking at it and talking about it together, almost like a team meeting, it just feels like there's no secrets. And that's the time to talk about things if they do come up that would be uncomfortable, because that's the financial conversation time, rather than looking for the right moment. So yeah.
I think this is a lot like our emotional infidelity conversation, because to me, money is something that's really uncomfortable to talk about for most people.
Oh, it is. Yeah.
Yeah. And it has a lot to do with the way that you were brought up and how money was discussed in your home, or whether or not you were brought up in an environment where you guys struggled financially, or where you were brought up in an environment, where you were really well provided for and had, privileges. So that kind of changes how you see money and how you spend money as you get older. And I think also, it's one of those things, like for us as women, I know for myself as a woman who I've been divorced in the past, I know how quickly like financial situation can go south in that kind of a circumstance. And so I think we even did an episode about it. I know we did an article about it, about keeping like what I call with my daughters, a fuck off fund.
Yes, we did.
Yeah.
We did.
So, I mean, to me, that's something that I would feel safer having in my back pocket, even if I had no intention of leaving my partner. Just having that reserve fund in case things went south for me in some way as a woman, because I do feel more vulnerable financially. I'm also in a relationship where historically my partner has made significantly more money than me, and it's not a balanced financial relationship. So that's complicated too.
So, I mean, if we're going based on what we said in our past episode about how you don't have to let your partner know about your golf fund, does that go against the financial infidelity thing? Like if you don't keep secrets, but it's okay to keep your F off fund a secret?
Yeah.
Is that the silver lining right there? I'm just curious. I have no judgment. But I think that's, if you're using your F off fund for the purposes that you used it for, at that point, who cares about what that person thinks? They have screwed you over. That's why, if it makes you feel safer as a woman, I totally agree.
Yeah. So like in my situation, that's something I'm pretty transparent about, that is what makes me feel safe and comfortable in my relationship. And to feel like I'm not here for any reason other than that I want to be here. I have choices.
Mm-hmm.
That makes my partner feel secure also, that I'm not staying out of need or out of, no other choice, that kind of a situation. That's not something he wants to feel either. So I'm transparent about that. But I think that's an individual decision of the dynamics of your relationship and how that would make your partner feel. And also where you're pulling that money to fund that fund.
Mm-hmm.
If you got a bonus at work and instead of saying anything, you put it in there, is that infidelity? Probably. Am I judging you? Absolutely not. But
right.
But if you guys are working towards paying off mutual debt, and you have goals that you're trying to meet, and you're, siphoning from that to fund this, then that's probably a conversation that you need to have, because it will, if it comes up later, it will be a trust violation for sure.
Because if I were that person that on the other side, I'd be like, well, why didn't I start an FOF fund? I've been putting money towards the home renovation, blah, blah, blah. And you've been pocketing money in your own fund. Like you would feel betrayed,
Absolutely.
Bottom line, you'd feel betrayed.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I guess it's up in individual, right? On what to do about that. Because I do feel like if you are in a relationship where your partner, man or woman, makes significantly more than you do, and you're already seen as somebody possibly who's there for the money, it is good to have something, a nest for you to have on your own, because I mean, the life's crazy, right? Mm-hmm. So it's just good to take care of you, because that's your only goal in life, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or you and your kids or whatever. So that's always good to have. But maybe just having the conversation of having them knowing you have a separate account that you have for emergencies, whatever it is, or you put towards, like call it like a girls' weekend fund, but it's really secretly what you say. If you think I don't know. I feel like that's lying too. What am I? But I'm just saying, like, I guess it's individual. My husband and I, like I said, we have separate bank accounts. So, I know that, if I needed help, I could come to him and talk to him and we'd work it out. Like if I'm transparent with my finances and he's transparent with his, but we don't visually share it. We just work towards the goals that we have and make sure things get covered. Especially, I feel like this is a major problem. Correct me if I'm wrong. Around the holiday season, I like, for me, little backstory, my husband used to be a personal trainer. So around this time of year, the holiday season is hardest for them because a lot of people decide to go out of town or, stop working with their trainer so they could put money towards other things. So I've been used to paying for Christmas presents forever for our children. And it's always uncomfortable because certainly do I need help? Of course I need help, but I know that he can't provide it. So we work together and we talk it through. But if you're one to shut down because money is really uncomfortable to talk about, that's when these things happen or resentment happens. It's such an awkward this time of year for finances and being in a relationship.
I absolutely agree. And I think, again, a lot of it can come back to what you saw in your own home growing up. I mean, if you had parents who fought about money a lot, that may cause you to be more secretive about your purchases to avoid conflict, or it may cause you to really want transparency from both parties so that you avoid that conflict. I, growing up, with a single dad, he never talked to us about money. He never let us know if, he was worried about money or if we were flush or whatever our situation was. He never shared it with my sister. I have absolutely no idea how much money he ever made growing up. When I was growing up, we never talked about it. And I wish he had been a little bit more transparent with me and helped me see how he budgeted and how, taxes and things that I needed to know as an adult, because I really went into it blind. And I made a lot of financial mistakes when I was younger that affected my credit because I really didn't have any idea what I was doing. Nobody had taught me about credit cards or I had credit cards when I was a teenager and I have no idea how they got paid. Like I just swiped them and magically they worked. Like,
no way.
When I had my own credit card as an
You're
adult,
like, this is how this works, right? Yeah. And then you get bills. You're like,
and then I got a bill in the mail and I was like, what the fuck is this?
Yeah. I was the same way. I grew up with two parents that we lived in, Orange County in a really nice house. And my mom was a teacher. So don't know how this worked, but somehow they never talked about financial issues that I can recall. I don't remember any. They never talked about any hardship, but they also never really taught us about budgeting. I went into it completely blind, just like you, and made some financial mistakes and opened up a card and was like, thought it was like this magic thing. And, I mean, everyone has a story like that, I think. But now I not that I blame my parents, but man, it would have been a totally different approach had they had like worked financial, advice into conversations. I would have understood that I can't just go out into the world and get a cute hostess job and afford a 4-bedroom, 2-story house in Orange County like I thought. It's not the same. So it's good to talk about it. But man, if you are in an environment where money is hard and you talk about it a lot in a negative way, I could see it going both ways where you just don't want it. The thought of talking about money gives you this feeling of like PTSD that you avoid it at all costs.
Yeah.
And you hide it, not because you're ashamed, but just because it's we're all, products of what we grew up from. So yeah, it's tough. We never talked about money, but I don't ever see my husband ever spend like a lot of money or any money on himself for like things that he enjoys. So when I go out and buy things that I don't feel are in need, I feel kind of silly or ashamed just because he's not doing the same. And I'm like, well, maybe if I have this extra money, I should be putting it towards our bills more. That's why I get a little guilty, but I certainly cover all of my costs. So I guess I fall in that weird gray area. But it's only because I don't see him doing similar things. And,
Yeah, I think one thing as moms that we all have a tendency to do, and it's such a stereotype or a typical thing that we have memes about it and we joke about it. It's like one of the ways that we're very emotionally depleted, right? We give and give and give to our husbands, our kids, our friends, our family. And while they do give back, it's not a balanced situation.
No.
No.
So well put, by the way. So well put.
So self-care is something that's really important. And it's hard to do when, as moms, we have zero time. Mm-hmm. So those forms of self-care come from going to Target and treating yourself to something, getting a Starbucks, getting your nails done, things that are, they're minimal, really. We're not talking about, luxury shopping sprees every day. We're talking about the little things we treat ourselves to every day, mm-hmm. or every so often. Mm-hmm. And that it does come with guilt too, because if you are working towards financial goals with your family or you are in debt, it can feel like it's not that you're not deserving of it. It's that you feel guilty for taking out of the family pot to feed your own need. But I have to say, we get such little in the way of rewards for the mom job that we do. It's crumbs, honestly. Like the macaroni necklaces are fantastic, but they do not equate the work that we do. And it's all, very unpaid, undervalued work. So a Starbucks every now and then is.
Are you
is
giving
nothing to be
permission?
ashamed of. I give prime permission.
Good, I hear it.
If I could buy all of you a Starbucks for the holiday, I would.
Man,
We
because
deserve
it's true. It's like it's gone so quick. Tell me if I'm wrong, but I'm the 90% of the people who re-microwave that Starbucks coffee 4 times throughout the day because I forget about it. And it's like, well, I paid $6 for it. It's going back in the heating system. And as I'm going in, I'm finding my old coffee from the other day just sitting in there in the microwave. Like but truly we deserve it. It's not a big purchase, but it's how much better do we feel on the drive home holding that Starbucks, like the chaos could be happening behind us, but it does not matter. Everything is calm for that 5 to 10 minutes that you have your coffee. It's hard though. And you certainly don't want to come home with it in your hand. If you guys are, struggling financially and your husband sees a red cup and he's like, what? That's where that guilt comes in. But yeah, I feel like this time of year is the hardest.
It's the hardest. And like our situation is we're a blended family, right? Between the two of us, we have 7 adult children. So when we're contributing to a shared we don't have a shared account so much, but when we're contributing to a shared family income and his contribution is significantly more than mine, and then, I want to do something extra for one or more of my kids, I'm pulling out of our shared pot for my own children. It's just a complicated situation. And he would never say, oh, don't, that's too much or that's too generous. He would never do that. He fully supports and loves the kids. Like, it's not about that.
Doesn't that come from you working since you were like old enough technically to, like, you have been such a workhorse that
I've worked
that's just in your mind to think that no matter how you could be together for 1 billion years and you would still feel a little off just because that's just you. That's just how you are.
I have worked since I was 13 years old.
There you go. Really, it wasn't even legal to do. And I was 15 and a half and I was like asking for a job because I found out I could make my own money and I could buy my stuff based on the fact that all I have to do is do that and I could make money. But 13, you beat me. That's not legal. What were you doing?
I had a paper route with the local paper.
Like I started a babysitter's club.
After school, every day on my bike, throwing papers. I had a massive paper route. It was huge.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And on the weekends, my dad would drive me, or because it was in the morning on the weekends, and in the weekdays, it was in the afternoon. But I mean, I hustled since 13 and I still hustle. And it's not that I don't contribute to our family.
And even when you don't need to hustle, you just can't sit still. You like the hustle. That's just who you are. So I can only imagine how you feel when that moment comes, because that's just your personality.
Right. Yeah. And if you were to ask my partner, he would say that I contribute to our household as much or more than he does. I manage all of our investments. I manage all of our finances. I save money constantly for him and his estate planning and tax planning.
It's like,
I'm double checking every single charge. I find a lot of mistakes. I fix a lot of things. So it's not equal, but it's fair, So, but when I want to do something really special for one of the kids or they have a need, it is a little awkward. And because between the 7 kids, their needs are not always equal. So we try to be equal and fair, but there have been times where I've helped one of the kids out of my own pocket and didn't necessarily tell him the whole story. I think he would never have said no, or I don't think you should do that. Quite the opposite, but it's just one of those things that I feel like it's my responsibility because they're my kids. If that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, you go by your moral compass. That's how you run your life. And so that's just how you've always been. And so a lot of people would say though, that running the household and doing all the things that you do and making sure that everything turns the way it turns in the way that it turns is like a 6-figure a year job should be paid. You know what I mean? Like without you, it wouldn't work, So, and we always underpay ourselves in our own head too, we're like, oh, but really, truly, if you take yourself out of the equation for 2 days and just watch it and see how it runs, it's not going to run.
It wouldn't. He always says that if something happened to me, or for whatever reason I wasn't here, the amount of people he would have to hire to take care of the things that I take care of, like for him personally, his medical stuff, the finances. He's like, I would have to hire a team and it would cost me hundreds of thousands of dollars. Like, you don't understand.
You're a deal, girl. You're a sweet deal.
I'm a freaking bargain.
Yeah. No, that's what I'm saying. Without you, it would not work. So don't, and you can't work like that and have the attention to that. And also be at a, 40 to 60 hour a work week job like that. It's not possible. It's not possible. So cut yourself some slack, but it's hard because you just see the dollar amount and that's what you see. You're not getting paid for the work that you do that we all know should be paid. That's nice to hear, but it's not what you see when you see it.
But I'm benefiting. I'm definitely benefiting from it. But I think, we live in a country where debt in particular is shared if you're legally married. And so that to me, more than like personal expenditures that you just don't share with you don't say to your spouse, hey, I bought a dress today, or hey, is it okay if I get this? For me, what I equate with financial infidelity in a serious level is like compulsive shopping or gambling debt.
Oh yeah.
Or spending money if you were being also physically, infidelitous. Is that a word? I don't know. If you're physically cheating and you're spending money on that, that's
my gosh, that's like crossing off all the boxes. That's layers. That's layers of infidelity.
Yeah.
Or if you have an addiction of some sort and you're using mutual funds or your funds and running yourself into debt because you're married and somebody shares your name, that's the main one that we're talking about,
Or if you have debt that you're opening debt accounts, credit card accounts, separate bank account things, and running up debt, and you're not sharing that with your partner. And this is something that will affect them and their credit report for the next 7 to 10 years minimum. I mean, that to me is the worst type of financial infidelity. And I have heard of this before. I have heard of people taking out mortgages on their houses without telling their spouses, running up credit card debt, and thinking to themselves, I'll make it on the next thing, I'll pay it back, whether that is gambling debt or trying to start a business or not telling your spouse you lost your job or something to that level where you're pulling yourself into really deep debt. That to me is what I consider real true level of financial infidelity that I would be hard for me to forgive and come back from.
Yeah, we eased into it with the Starbucks. Now we're talking about the ones that really like shake you to the core, make you feel like seriously betrayed and affect, your ability to live your life individually and what that does to your name and all of that. So,
yeah. So, I mean, if this is something that you are experiencing in your relationship or you are struggling with, whether it's you or your partner that has been the, financially irresponsible unfaithful one. I think, first of all, of course, the first step is to have the conversation. With this idea that we're going to make it up, we're going to pay it off and they'll never know, throw that out the window. That never works. I have to tell you, that never works. You're watching the mailbox like a hawk, waiting for the statements and trying to get them before the partner does. The level of stress and distrust that builds in a relationship, because even if they haven't caught you yet, they know you're not being honest about something. We can always tell when our partner, the person we know best in the world, is keeping something from us. And the stress that creates, it's going to affect your health and your sleep and your ability to work and everything while you're trying to figure out how to handle this. So just have the conversation, get everything out in the open. It's going to be really hard and it's going to be a lot of tears and hurt feelings, but you have to do it. The longer it goes on, the longer you were doing a betrayal. It compounds like a snowball, right? When someone tells you, hey, I've been lying to you for the last 2 weeks, You say, okay. And you talk, hey, I've been lying to you for the last 2 years, feels different.
Because here's the thing, even if you fix the financial issue, the betrayal's still there. There was a period of time where you were doing something shady, you know, with the finances, whether it was gambling or trying to, or, you know, asking friends for help, you know, going and now you have this awkward friendship that you didn't know about. And then you find out that your husband like asked to borrow money 2 months ago. And you're like, what? You know, like that stuff happens in movies. So it's got to happen in real life. Like,
I'm sure.
Even if you fix the financial part, you still have to work on the betrayal. And that to somebody might be more important than the financial part itself. So that's something to think about, because even if you figure out your own issues, you still have that issue that you caused trying to solve that other issue.
Yeah. And I think if you're the victim in the unfaithfulness and your partner comes to you and says, I have this secret I've been keeping, it's making me sick, I need to talk to you about it, here's what's going on. I always say that you should come from a place of compassion before judgment. We don't know what people are dealing with. We don't know what experiences people have had that cause them to have the survival skills and coping mechanisms that they have. I mean, yes, it's a betrayal. Yes, you have every right to be angry, all of it, but also to have a little bit of compassion for wherever that person came from and what got them into that situation. If it's just reckless irresponsibility and it's just the last thing in a pattern of reckless irresponsibility, that's different. If you're with someone who maybe grew up below the poverty line, struggled, and they started making, you know, their first bit of money and went a little crazy, you can be compassionate to that. If the person is struggling with an actual addiction, you can be compassionate to that, and there's help for that. That's an illness. I think, you know, if this is not like the last straw in a string of bad decisions this person has made, if you come at it from a place of compassion, first of all, they're more likely to be really honest with you. And second of all, that's the only way that you can really heal from something like this. I think it's different from infidelity that involves another person where it's emotional or physical. This is a trust issue for sure, but there may be other reasons. There may be layers of reasons, that trauma and stuff that they need to work through that cause them to react in this way. And maybe they chose the lesser of several evils, but it's not good, but it's something that can be, I think this kind of infidelity can be healed from, and the relationship can be mended much easier than other types of infidelity, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I mean, it depends on the degree of infidelity. You know, I'm sure there's like, we just talked about the smallest all the way to some bigger examples. But I mean, there could be so many reasons that this behavior has come about. And if you're open and you listen and you come from a place where you're not angry and standoffish, you said it perfectly. Somebody's going to be more honest with you and more open with you because they feel safer with you when they're talking to you about it. And so it's hard and it sucks, but it could also be one of those things as a relationship that you guys overcome together and makes your relationship stronger, if that's the way you want to look at it. You know, it could break you, you could see it as something to work at together. It just, that first conversation that you have is going to kind of determine how it's going to go, you know, and hopefully it goes well, but the more honest you are sooner, the better off it's going to go, because if it's longer, it's going to be harder for them to comprehend. It's going to feel more, it's going to feel more gut wrenching, you know?
Yeah. It's not so much the lie. It's when you think back, if they've lied to you for a few weeks, okay. If they've lied to you for months and years, when you think back over all the conversations you had over those period of time, over all the times you felt particularly close to that person and you shared something vulnerable with them, and to know that they had a secret they didn't share with you, and that they had something that they should have been told to you that wasn't, in all those moments, it really contaminates all of the memories that you've had from that period of time. It's really hard because that's such a breach of trust. Mm. But I think there are reasons why people do the things that they do. It doesn't excuse it, but we're going to say the same thing we say every time. This is the point where if this is really hard for you to work through and not easy to forgive, work through it with a professional. You and your partner go and sit down with a therapist and work through this. How did we get to this point? Why did they make these decisions? How can we avoid this in the future? I mean, this is the time to bring in a professional and make sure that you guys heal from this, because the last thing we ever want to do as partners in any type of relationship, whether it's friendship, family, romantic, when someone shares a vulnerability with us and tells us something that's hard for them to share, we never want to throw that back at them in an argument. And that will be very tempting to do. So, because
man. Yes, it's true. It's true. It feels like, because they're reliving that moment all over again, you know, and that forgiving and move forward meant nothing, felt like.
Right. And they screwed up big time, which is true, but that doesn't give us a get out of jail free card on how we behave. Of every argument we have to say, well, at least I didn't run up our credit card bills, or, oh, well, go out and buy another bag then. Like, this is not what we want to do. We want to be productive and solve the problem. So talk to a professional if you feel like you need that support. I think most people would in this situation need that level of support. And then I think you have to kind of start from scratch and lay all your cards out on the table and be complete. The only way to gain trust back in any type of a betrayal situation is to lay everything out on the table and be completely transparent. If you've had any other type of infidelity with your partner, like, you're going to have to tell them where you're going. And oh, look, so-and-so is calling me. I mean, it feels weird, but in the beginning, that's how you start to build the trust back, by showing that there are no secrets, then I have nothing to hide from you and everything is on the table. And the money situation is no different. Just sitting down with all the bills and all the, income that's coming in, and lay it all out and figure out how to climb out of the hole together, hopefully.
Yeah.
What else?
You can't make the person feel even more alone than they felt already coming into the conversation. The more you feel like you can get through this as a team, the more the person's going to feel, because they already have internalized so much because they've been trying to paint this picture that isn't really true, so they already have thought of the worst case scenario, which is you not sticking by their side and alienating them. So, when you have that time in your heart to forgive and become a team again, it certainly will help you in the long run,
Yeah, I think if to tell the person that, oh, you dug this hole, you find your way out of it, or you made your bed. If they could have solved it on their own, they would have already done so. Like, they're coming to you asking, saying, hey, I screwed up. I need your help as my partner and my teammate to get out of this situation. Now, does that mean you write them a check and bail them out of whatever their problem is? Not necessarily, but figuring out moving forward, do we combine finances? Do we divide finances? Maybe if your partner's issue is that they want to do things for themselves and that got out of control, maybe they have their own side account where they have spending money that they can spend however they want, and they don't need to answer to anybody and nobody's going to see it. And that's fine. If it's a set amount that you guys both feel comfortable with. Maybe the issue is that they felt too stifled by joint accounts, not placing blame on anybody for that. But everybody handles money differently, and everybody comes into financial situations with all of the baggage from all of their past decisions and relationships and childhood and all of that. So if you handle money very, very differently than your partner does, and you like to budget in a way that makes them uncomfortable or feel stifled, then separate accounts might be a way better deal for you. Nobody said you have to have a joint bank account because you're together, or, nobody said you have to do things one way or the other. Do what works for your relationship. I think everybody has to figure out what that is, what that means for them.
1,000%. What works for some people doesn't necessarily work for others. And, as long as you don't feel it all comes down to that core of betrayal. When you feel betrayed, when you feel like something's like not right. And if somebody is making some expending decisions that doesn't feel right to you, well, then have a conversation. If you guys are living under the same roof, going towards the same goals, paying some similar bills, then you do have a little bit of a right to have that conversation and get some more information. You know, if you're living separately and you just want to know how they have all that money to buy that ridiculous stuff, well, I don't know if you can ask, but we're talking about the ones where, you know, you're under one roof, you're sharing similar goals, or maybe you're working towards moving in to a place together. And, you know, that person just hasn't gotten it together spending wise and all this, and you're putting all that extra love and time towards that pot, that little honey pot, and they're not taking it seriously. That can feel like an infidelity as well. And you're not even at that point yet, you know?
Yeah, that brings up a really good point. A lot of this can be avoided by having really honest money conversations before you move in with someone or marry someone or make that big commitment step, because you know, one person might have a ton of student debt and one person might not, and they might not be comfortable taking that on, and that's a conversation you need to be honest about with your partner moving forward. And I found, you know, what works well for a lot of couples is to have their two separate accounts and then have one joint account where they each put in their percentage of they calculate what all their monthly bills are, and they put in their percentage to that joint account to pay that. Now, anything they have above and beyond that is their own to spend out of their own account. That I've seen work really, really well, but everybody's different. Again, have these conversations before.
Oh man.
Before.
As sexy as they are, right? I know it's such an weird, like odd thing to think of to have in a relationship, but honestly, like finances are so important when having a relationship. It's like not having a kid conversation and then going into it and then having it. You're like, oh, we had different viewpoints. Oh shoot. Right. You know, like, no, this is also really important to know going in where they are, where they stand, where they're wanting to go. Because if they're so polar opposite of you, it makes you like, it kills you to know that their entire life savings is in an actual piggy bank that they keep by their bed. It might make you freaked out if you've been saving since 13 and you have big goals, you know, and may not line up with what you want.
Exactly. If you're a social worker and your fiance is a hotshot lawyer, you're going to have very different incomes. So you need to just figure out ahead of time if you're going to put in different percentages into the bills, or if it's going to be split evenly. And if it's going to be split evenly, you know, how do you do date nights? How do you do vacations? Because you're a very different income level. You may have had parents who went through bankruptcy or multiple bankruptcies or had a lot of debt that they're still, you know, really reeling over. And so you may be really wary of debt, and you may have a partner who has a bunch of credit cards and maybe they pay them off every month, but just seeing that credit card bill fold makes you feel really nervous. That's normal. All of that is normal. And I think having those conversations and being honest with your partner early on about what makes you uncomfortable as terms of money, where you see yourself in your career, what your income capacity is, like what shared goals you guys have. Is homeownership important to you or not at all? Is, you know, would you rather spend that money traveling, or what? Everyone has different goals.
You may really like his car and you may really think that he's super cool and his eyes are cute and pretty. But if you guys if you find out that his goals, there's so many people out there in the world that honestly, if you're going to stay with somebody for the rest of your life and they are so far away from where you want to be financially, there are some really driven young people out there. You know, your kids are prime examples of that. And if they are not in line and with someone that has those same goals and aspirations, it's not infidelity. It's like resentment. You know, resentment builds, and you don't want resentment in such a new, fresh relationship. I mean, there's always learning, and people can learn and grow and change, you know, and evolve. And like, I have learned so much about finances and just a lot of things in life by being with Dan, because he's older and he was patient with me and taught me. But, you know, there's got to be some conversation. Like, we did talk about these things before getting married, because you can't miraculously like think you know what they want just by like conversation that you've had about other things, and you can't expect them to just share that information with you. You know, like I don't know, it's a thing that have to happen if you want to avoid these problems in the future, you know?
Yeah, you have to talk about it. And we've talked about this in past episodes, but part of that conversation before you guys combine your finances, or before you start splitting things like house payments and signing joint debt, whether you're married or not, before you start doing those things, having a conversation about a lot of families now, like I said, are blended. Maybe you have children from a previous relationship. How are you going to manage that financial responsibility, especially if they're young? Is that something that your partner is willing to participate in, or is he expecting you to provide for all of their needs? And if you get support from a previous relationship or a parent of a child that you share with someone else, is that being applied to household bills, or it's just being applied to the care of the child? That's a conversation you need to have. If you have family members who you know are likely to ask you for loans or are going to need financial help, maybe your parents are really badly in debt, or you help support an elderly parent, elderly grandparent, somebody who's in a home. I don't know. You could have a developmentally delayed sibling that you might have to care for at some point in your life. You need to have all of these conversations with your partner before you make any kind of commitment to each other, because if they're not on board, this is going to be a very big problem later. You can't say, oh, we'll figure it out, we're so in love. No, doesn't work like that. If you know that your parents might ask to move in with you at some point, one or both of them, or need money, or that they ask you for loans sometimes, and you haven't shared that with your partner, that's not a surprise that you want to spring on him 5 or 10 years in. Trust.
No. Trust.
He may not be okay with them moving into the guest room. He may not be okay with you taking money out of the shared, vacation fund to help them out in a jam.
Yep.
Because maybe his parents are totally financially fine and don't need their help. And so it's going to build resentment. That's how major marital conflict starts, not just with money, but in how that colors our relationships and inequality within the relationship. It's very complicated, but
it all stems from preschool and everybody wanting to have the same cookie. And if that person got a bigger cookie than the rest of us, we were like, that's not fair. Like, it's just, we all just want to feel like we're not being duped, in some way, or being lied to by the person we trust the most in this world.
Yes.
It's just such a bad feeling. So whether we're talking about financial or emotional or whatever, it's just the more open you are, when this problem arises, the sooner, the better off everyone is. It seems like there's that common theme of like, don't drag it on for 4 to 5 months or years, and you'll like save yourself a lot of headache.
Yeah.
And it's already tough, coming out and being open with your partner, but like, and don't drag it out.
We're focusing on negative right now. Like, we're focusing on problems that we're having and things that we need to like confess. But, we can also share goals with our partner. You guys can set a really positive goal. Maybe you want to go to Australia on vacation. Maybe you want to buy a house. Maybe you want to adopt a dog and you don't have the savings to do that right now. You guys can, band together as a team, and it will grow your relationship to work on something jointly like that and contribute to something that you both are excited about. Have those, like we said, regular check-ins, where you see, okay, look, we've got this much money set aside for that, and it's growing this much per month. We might be able to go to Disney World by, April of next year. That's amazing. Like, whatever the goal is that you guys want to do, working towards something together with your partner is one of the best feelings. When you achieve it together and you did it together, it's like the most amazing feeling.
Yeah.
So It can be super positive too.
Totally. Yeah.
I mean,
and if you make it more regular, it's not going to feel weird bringing financial things up. If you make it like a meeting, like you talk about once a month, then, there's nothing that slips through the cracks, and it's already a part of the process. And you don't have to look for the right moment.
Yeah. And the more complicated your financial situation gets as you age and as you get older, and you have things like retirement accounts and you have mortgages, and should we refinance that? Should we not? What's the interest rate on that credit card? It gets complicated. So having check-ins, we do it monthly. You guys can do it however often works for you, but where you sit down and review things, because sometimes you'll see, we just realized the other day that we were paying a high interest rate on something that there was no reason for it. So we solved that problem, but it required us both like looking over everything. So putting your heads together on a regular basis, even if one person handles all the finances, just having that regular check-in so the other person does feel involved and part of the process, and there's open communication. That's the time to bring up things like, hey, I heard I might be getting a raise this year. Like, where should we put those extra funds? What do we need to pay off, or what do we want to save for? whatever
Totally.
it is. Yeah.
Any positive thing that I have happened to me financially, I share it with Dan, and any positive or negative thing he has financially, he shares it with me too. So I never feel like I don't know exactly how much he has, but I know generally how he's doing financially because we have regular conversations about it, not all the time, but I don't feel like I'm completely in the dark. And so there's no
Right.
need for me to feel betrayed or feel like there's something shady going on, because like we talk about it enough to where I know that he's not secretly a billionaire somewhere and has like an island that I know about, you know. Same, you know, he knows when I do well, and when I get something good happen, I try and bring it up in a way where it's like, how can we help the family? So he knows that I'm not taking that raise and like going shopping with it, you know, because we have mutual goals. That do I deserve it? Yes. Would he be mad at me? No. But I mean, I'm a grown up now, you know, and it's like I can't keep making those choices if we ever want to get there. So
yeah, and you have kids who are at that age where you guys are having conversations about, okay, you know, next year we need to do braces, or you know, so and so wants to go to this camp this summer. How are we going to afford that? Camps are like thousands of dollars.
Dude, preschool is ridiculous.
Yes.
I'm like on my last year of preschool, and around here in Southern California, it's like ridiculous, so ridiculous that if she doesn't know Italian by the end of the year, I'm going to be very upset.
Yeah.
What am I paying for? And I'm just, those things happen, and it's like with gymnastics and Girl Scouts and preschool, it's like, how do you divvy that up on top of your monthly expenses that you already have, and without somebody feeling like resentful or that it's so, you know, uneven in one way or another. You just have to be open on where you are and how can I help? Because at the end of the day, you don't want to see your partner stressed. You don't want to see your partner unhappy, and your partner doesn't want to see you stressed or unhappy. So
yeah, and you guys
work
might have
together. You know,
guys might have different ideas about whether private school is worth the money or public school's just fine, or you know, all the different things. Like as your kids get a few years from now, you guys are going to be talking about like, what do we get for Emma's first car? I mean, that's crazy to think about, but that's where you guys are.
I'm going to keep going to the Price is Right until I win a car, or she takes public transportation.
She's getting
and
a bus
college, she better get a scholarship. Yeah, like, yeah, it's crazy. It is crazy. The older they get, it's like, oh yeah, all the diapers, that's a lot of money, but it's not like the older they get, the less expensive they become. It just becomes more complicated.
As your kids get older, those conversations of, are we paying for college or are they paying for their own college? You might have totally different ideas. Maybe
should so and so get a job because they can, or do we keep paying for their things? Like older out of the house kids, you know, should we keep paying for our adult children?
Right.
Those are other topics.
I still have my adult kids on my cell phone plan, just simply because it's cheaper. It costs me like $20 per kid a month. It would cost them probably $100 to do their own cell phone plan.
That's just good. That's just good parenting.
Yeah. I carry them on my health insurance. I mean, on my car insurance until they're 25, because car insurance is really expensive until you're 25.
I think my dad did that too. I'm still, my dad's like AAA. Like if there's anything I could legally still be attached to with him, I do. Yeah, just because like he helps.
We get like an extra Costco card with our executive membership, so I give it to one of the kids. Like, or yeah, health insurance. Health insurance is something where I can have it through, you know, work and carry them until they're 25. So why wouldn't I?
Yeah.
It's the whole thing. Yeah. But maybe your partner doesn't feel that way. I have friends who kids reached college age and they realized they had very different ideas about paying for college, because maybe their parents paid cash for their college and they never had debt and they never had to think about it. And so they think obviously that's what parents are supposed to do. And their spouse worked their way through college and took out student loans and worked really hard for that. And he thinks that kind of accountability is really important for kids.
Yeah.
So you have to have that conversation as soon as possible, as soon as it comes up. I mean, don't wait until the kid's like filling out their FAFSA, because that would really be bad.
Yeah. You don't want resentment. You know, it's hard to, I mean, your partner probably knows you're not psyched on something, but it's hard to solve a problem when the problem's not brought up. I mean, you can be upset all you want about it, but if you haven't talked to your partner about it, it still can't get resolved, you know, then you're just, you know, it's not helping anyone. So
right. I
Have
also
the
know
conversation.
I have a lot of friends who have a situation with their partner where they have a magic number, and if either one of them is going to spend over that number on something, they need to give the other one a heads up. So they text or call and say, "Hey, I'm here. They have this. I've been saving for this, and it's on sale today, so I'm going to go ahead and buy it. But it's over whatever the threshold is. It could be $1,500, it could be $500, it could whatever is comfortable for you."
Big purchases should always be mutually talked. I mean, that's my opinion. Do what you want to do. But if it's a huge purchase and you don't tell your partner about it and they just see it missing, like, I don't know, I would feel a little like, what the heck?
Yeah.
Where was the text? So that's a good rule to have. You just don't want to avoid awkward, icky conversations about money.
That's one of those transparency things. So if you set that kind of, it's not a rule, but if you set that guideline early, then there's no question over what your expectations are. Because the other thing that can come up with infidelity is if you call the person, maybe you find out, they don't tell you, you find out, you see that credit card statement, or you see a credit card you didn't know you had come in the mail, and you say, "Hey, what the F?" And your partner says, "Oh, I didn't know I had to tell you about that. That's my own stuff."
There you go.
I'm going to
ride in that wave until you bring it up, because like you didn't say not to. You didn't have this conversation, so I didn't do anything wrong.
I was going to pay it out of my own account, so it's none of your business anyway. Like, who cares? Like, I didn't know I needed to tell you. So if you set those kind of guidelines and up front, say, "Hey, you know what? If you're going to spend over this amount, like," and same for me, just let each other know so that you don't feel like there was any secrets. That's a very healthy thing to do.
Yeah, because even if you have goals are great, but you know what? Emergencies happen all the time, and cars break down and things happen, and there's like leaks in the house. And if you just bought a really nice bag that you didn't tell your spouse about, and a leak happens like 2 days later, you're going to be really bummed that, you didn't have that conversation. Or I don't know. I just think that like when it becomes a problem and you're putting your happiness before like the other things, like our adult things we need to do, then it becomes like that borderline addiction, to where it becomes a slippery slope until it becomes a really big problem. So just if you're doing things and you're like keeping a secret, then that's maybe like a sign, like just like the emotional thing.
If it's something you have to lie about, you probably shouldn't be doing it.
Yes. And if you're doing it repeatedly, then it's a real problem, and you're going to have a lot of conversation to happen between you and your spouse, because it's going to happen. Like we said, it's not going to just like magically fix itself and your spouse is never going to know. No one finds a money tree and fixes all their problems and like things go away. Like even if you borrow it from your father-in-law or your friends, like that conversation will come up in a conversation. Even if they swear they never say anything, they're going to have too many beers one day with you and be like, "Oh yeah, and that money what?" Like you never want to blindside anyone.
No.
So don't cover it up.
Right. And it can affect your relationship with other people in the family. It's a complicated situation. So we just avoid it as if you can by being as transparent and open as possible. The whole thing can be avoided. We hope that our partner's intentions are always good and that they have our best interests at heart. But it can feel like they don't when something like this comes up.
If you're really, truly horribly worried about having this conversation with your partner, relationships are about coming together in good times and bad. And these are one of those bad times. And these should be one of those moments that, makes your relationship stronger. And if it doesn't pan out that way, well, then also maybe that's another thing you should talk about, because really you want to be with somebody that will go through the trenches with you. Things will happen that are tragic, like money issues, loss of major kinds of all sorts. And you want someone by your side that isn't going to alienate you and run the minute that you make a human error, So certainly be honest, but be very alert of how they're handling the news with you, because you deserve to be with somebody who understands that you are a human being and you make human error. And it's tragic, of course, but you're making the right decision of being open. And if it's not being received in a way where, like you can get through this together, of course they'll be angry. But if they come back and want to say, "Okay, let's get through this," this is going to make your relationship stronger. I'm not saying it's a good thing it happened, but we all go through really tragic moments in our relationships, and this is one of them. And it's going to strengthen you guys. You know?
We all know that more than 50% of marriages end in divorce. And one of the biggest things people argue about is money.
Mhm.
So this is a hot button topic for most people. But as you said, you should feel safe in your relationship sharing something with your partner, even if it's a mistake of a serious nature that you've made. You should never feel unsafe sharing that with the person who you share your life with. And the problem solving conversation that you have, or the conflict resolution conversation that you have, should, no matter what the topic is, should always be you and your partner versus the problem, not you versus your partner. That is a fundamental paradigm shift that changes entire relationships.
That's like such a basic thing. If any relationship expert tells you, a lot of problems become, they look at the person versus the problem, not them together versus the problem,
Yes.
And that's where the misconception of the problem can start, because you're attacking the person rather than seeing how you can come together and attack the problem is what you're talking about.
You and your partner should always be on the same team. And so in this situation, you need to be remorseful. If you're the person who's been unfaithful in this way, you need to be remorseful, and you need to ask for their help and offer to, do anything that you can do to solve the problem. But the best way is not to get into the situation in the first place.
Just avoid that altogether if you could.
Transparency. Transparency, financial responsibility, talking about it early, all the things we said to avoid this problem. Yeah.
Yep.
Well, hopefully this helped somebody who's dealing with this situation right now, because it is a really difficult situation. So we feel for you if you're going through this, whatever side of the situation you're on, it's hard all around.
It's hard.
And yeah.
I'm hoping that somebody is in the process of, and they're going to make the right decision, because around, like I said, this time of year is the worst for this, I feel, because you just start to make unrealistic decisions with money, because you think in the new year or whatever, it'll figure itself out, because now you have to do it right now,
Society, the media, everybody during December really pushes the narrative of shop, buy. Every gift has to be over the top. I mean, you see all the commercials with the car with the bow on it, and you see all the crazy jewelry. I mean, they really push it. It's really hard to avoid this time of year. So
especially, I feel like with all the people who have possibly lost jobs, but you still want to provide that magical Christmas for your family, you're going to find ways to make up, because it's not their fault that you lost your job or that things are going on, but then they still deserve a nice Christmas or whatever, so it's like this time of year has to be the hardest for this type of situation. So if you are in it, I'm so sorry. I feel for you. Hopefully we helped in some sort of way.
Yeah, hopefully we helped. If you guys want to talk about this more, please feel free to go to our Facebook page and click on discussion group. And you guys can discuss this amongst yourselves. If you guys have been through this, or you have a personal story you want to share, or some tips, we would love to hear it over there on Facebook. And thank you guys again for joining us. We appreciate you coming back week after week. Episode 31, crazy.
It's crazy. Happy holidays.
Happy holidays. We'll see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks so much for listening to this week's episode. Don't forget to bookmark our site, she'safullonmonet.com, and subscribe to our newsletter. You can also find us on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. If you're enjoying this podcast, it helps us a lot if you can follow, rate, and review. See y'all next week.